It's easy to ignore fleet vehicles on the road. They're not very flashy, they just sort of blend into the background. One of those vehicles is the Ford Transit van. It's this vehicle and a ton of others keep society moving. Well, now this vehicle, the Transit, is now the E-Transit. It's electric. This is the E-Transit, the electrified version of Ford's Transit van. And what's great about this is that it looks exactly like a Transit. And what's great for fleet managers is that it has the exact same dimensions as a regular Transit, which means everything that you can put in a regular Transit that you already have in your fleet, you can put it in here. And that's a big deal. The E-Transit joins the fleet version of the F-150 Lightning as part of the Ford Pro family, a division of the automaker that works with and builds vehicles for businesses, from the florist down the street that only needs a single van or truck, all the way up to the gigantic retailers like Amazon and Walmart. It'll likely be the bosses that buy this vehicle, but for the employees, for the drivers, this is their tool. And for those of them that have been driving the Transit around for a few years, they'll be very impressed with this vehicle. Behind the wheel, the E-Transit drives essentially like a Transit. Well, actually, it drives better than the Transit because of the added weight of rear-wheel drive with the electric motor back there, plus the battery. They replaced the regular suspension with independent rear suspension, just like the F-150 Lightning, which means that when I hit bumps like that, it's not as jarring as it is in the Transit, because you have, it's not this, it's this. Ford has made some adjustments up here in the cabin. The display is much larger, it's Sync 4 plus all the telematics stuff, and they've removed the shifter that goes right here and replaced it with this rotary dial, which means when I get up to go in the back, I'm not hitting my knee on it. I just go back here in the back of my van. The touch screen, in fact, the entire car is essentially a giant sensor for fleet management. Now, Ford has this new fleet management system that you can use with this vehicle, with its new F-150, F-150 Lightning. In fact, any vehicle built by Ford since 2020 with a modem will automatically be able to be used within this fleet system. Plus, Ford is going to sell an OBD port that you can just plug into the port and you can throw Chevys on it, Toyotas, etc. Essentially, they want a one-stop telematics system, and it all starts with their vehicles. And with this vehicle, I don't need to plug anything in. It just works. And with it, the big fleet boss back at base using a web app can figure out where the car is, where it's been, what its state of charge is, how the person is driving. It's just anything that a fleet manager would want, including charging. If you charge at home, it figures out how much you're charging at home and how many kilowatts you're using, and then it automatically creates an expense report. So if you're an employee and you plug this in at home, you don't have to pull out your utility bill and figure out what time this was plugged in versus what you were watching on TV. It does it all right here, and the fleet manager has that data. Now, I'm going to tell you the range number, and before you balk at it, let's just say Ford did some research with all the Transit vans that are on the road, well, most of them, and they found that on average they travel about 78 miles per day. Now, this vehicle, 126 miles of range from a 68 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, for regular people, that seems way too low, but if you're just cruising around in the same area, that's not really that bad. In fact, this is 50 miles-ish more than the average Transit van use, according to Ford's data. It's also helpful to remember that Ford works closely with these companies to make sure they're buying the right vehicle for the right job. So if an electric van doesn't quite fit their needs, they're more than happy to send them home in a gas-powered Transit. Because it's built on an EV architecture, the people who buy it, the bosses, the companies, the corporations, whoever, they're going to save on fuel, they're going to save on maintenance, they're going to save on brakes, just because regenerative braking makes your regular brakes last way longer. But it's also nice for the employees because they're driving a vehicle that it's just smoother on the road, but also doesn't have that noise that comes from having, well, gas or a diesel vehicle. I mean, if you have a diesel, it's just like clang, 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 clang. It's like driving a tractor all day. This though, listen, that's nice. But while it's quieter and more comfortable to drive, it's not built for fun. In fact, there are fun police on this vehicle. For example, let's decide I just want to stomp on the gas.
Please avoid rapid acceleration when possible. Accelerating slowly is more fuel efficient.
That's what I hear. I get lectured every time I just stomp on the gas. And it's the same thing when you stomp on the brakes too quickly.
Unless in an emergency, please try to avoid sudden braking events. Looking ahead and braking early can help.
That's a lot of words. And eventually, if you're driving this vehicle and you're tired of listening well, tired of being scolded, you'll probably drive a little bit better. Now, all the tech wizardry isn't just to scold you for driving like a maniac. There's also this really cool system where, regardless of how much cargo you have in the back, whether this van is completely empty or completely full, it will accelerate in the same fashion. So if I'm always doing this, every time I drive, I'm hitting the accelerator, the car, the vehicle, the van is going to accelerate in the exact same way. That's impressive because it sets this nice baseline level that you always know how the vehicle is going to react. It is a rear-wheel drive, single motor vehicle with 266 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque, and some mad scientists went in there and said, you know what? We're gonna use this power so it works the exact same way every single time. And it's not just acceleration that gets the tech wizardry. Regenerative braking, for example. Right now I lift my foot, there's not really any regenerative braking. But if I lift my foot and I tap the brake once, I get about 30% regenerative braking. I tap it again, I get about 60%. Let's speed up a little bit. I tap it 3 times, tap, tap, tap. I get 100% of the regenerative braking, which is great when you're going down big hills. You don't want to just stomp on the gas, but you want to regenerate as much power as possible back to the battery. That's a nice little system that helps you, well, drive how you want to and get a lot of regenerative braking. Or you can just hit this little L button on the rotary and you always get a 100% regenerative braking, which, you know, that's your jam. At night or on the road, the vehicle will support DC fast charging up to 115 kilowatts. So midday interruptions, especially during lunch breaks, won't keep the van off the road for too long. While Ford won't comment on future products, there was a mention in passing from someone at Ford about van life, which means that there's a very good chance that something like this, a transit van, will be available for consumers sometime in the future with more range. Now, with the VW ID Buzz about to hit the market, or at least be unveiled, it'd be very important for Ford to at least get some of that market share. The e-Transit van is in production right now, and customers will be taking delivery in the next few weeks. For more automotive coverage next to Giants vans, and by the way, I will not help you move, be sure to subscribe to Engadget.